Carrie, intermission's over. Thank you. Carry on, please.
Thank you. So I think what I was just explaining was the history behind the application and why we're here today. So what this proposed application is, Committee of Adjustment has provisionally approved the consent application, which is to add the area where the accessory buildings are, the historic barn, to the dwelling portion of the lot. So the resulting lot line is the area that's in red that's identified. That's what's been provisionally approved. So this implementing zoning bylaw amendment application would recognize the same zoning for the area where the house is now and the area where the accessory buildings are. So it's simply to reflect that existing zoning. Just in terms of the lot area of the site is 1 hectare, that red line, roughly 1 hectare. That's what that's the maximum permitted size outlined in the county official plan and in your official plan. So the proposal does conform with both the county official plan and your official plan. Let's skip ahead here. So we have done a zoning bylaw, as a compliance review with the zoning bylaw associated with the accessory buildings on the structures, and have identified 2 areas of non-compliance with the zoning bylaw. But what this site-specific zoning amendment will do is legalize those accessory buildings, because effectively we've got a large barn on a rural residential property. So just in summary, the application's a fairly straightforward application. It's to recognize what's existing on the property, and ultimately what it results in is the preservation of these barns on the landscape. If this consent application and zoning bylaw amendment does not go through, the farmers have no need for these structures anymore. They are a cost to them and they would be removed. So part of the purpose of this application is to maintain those structures on the landscape going forward. So with that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions that follow from council and the public, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you. So first of all, I'll turn to the public and invite them to come forward if there's any questions on this application. Okay, seeing none, I'll turn to council. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor Francis, through you to our presenter. Mr. Lee, who lives in the house now, is that correct? Will he now be owning the extended property? Like before he used to live in a straight rectangle, now it's an inverted L shape. So he will own a larger piece of property if this goes through, is that correct? And in the future, if the owner wants to tear down all those buildings, then that won't change anything? Is that correct?
Through your worship, that's correct. Mr. Lee does currently, the property he owns is separate. There's a light gray line partway up on the drawing. That's the extent of the current property limits. And the consent application that was provisionally approved by the committee extends the property to the extent of that red line. He could tear down the buildings at any point in time in the future. We would have to seek a demolition permit from the municipality to do that. But that would not change or revert back the extent of the lot lines at that time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you for attending the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and showing interest in the matter. So thank you. So move on to ZB 2018-008 for G Prairie, Total Living Concepts at 464 Penetanguishene Road. I'll now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 27th day of August 2018 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 12 properties in the township of Springwater and Oro-Medonte within 240 meters of the areas to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons in public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was also posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location that was visible from Penetanguishene Road. The notice was also placed on the township's website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of public meeting?
Correspondence was received from the Simcoe County District School Board stating no objections, and the Township of Oro-Medonte stating no comment.
Thank you. And now call upon Mr. Robinson again of MHBC Planning Limited to give a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal.
Thank you, and good evening again. This application is on Penetang Road. It is located between the Willow Landing Golf Course and the Napoleon Warehouse. It's on the west side of Penetang Road. This is Total Living Concepts, if you're familiar with it. The Willow Creek borders the property to the north. And Mr. Glenn Prairie is with me tonight. He's the owner of Total Living Concepts, who has been operating out of this facility since 2001. His business has grown, and he would like to expand his showroom. This facility functions like a showroom and an office space for him. The building currently is about 2,000 square feet. He would like to add on another 1,000 square feet. So as a result of that, there's a few amendments to the zoning bylaw that are required to implement those proposed changes. Just in terms of the lot size is just over half a hectare, and there's about just under 100 meters of frontage on the county road. And you can see from this aerial photograph that there's a little bit of storage area at the back and then some vehicle parking at the front. The purpose of the application is to take it, the property is currently in an agricultural zone, and the purpose of this application is to put it into a general commercial zone that would permit the expansion of this facility. We have prepared a site plan for the proposed addition, as well as a parking layout that complies with the requirements of the township zoning bylaw. You can see the existing building identified in a yellow type color in the central portion of the site, and then the proposed additions identified in red. It's proposed towards Penetang Road and away from Willow Creek. Just in terms of the provincial policy statement, we have reviewed the provincial policy statement. These are considered rural lands in a municipality. In accordance with the PPS, other rural uses are permitted within rural areas, and this would be considered an other rural use and is consistent with the provincial policy statement. Just in terms of commercial activity on the site, the commercial use of this site has been in existence for at least 30 years. In terms of the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, it contains similar policies to the PPS related to growth, but does have additional policies that have been added recently in the spring related to natural heritage features and the new natural heritage mapping that you've probably heard a lot about. Those policies do permit expansions of existing uses, and the proposal would be in conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. We have reviewed the county official plan as well. This land falls within the Greenlands designation in the county official plan. The county plan in the Greenlands designation does allow for expansions of existing uses, and this would be considered an expansion of an existing use within the Greenlands designation. And the Greenlands is really a reflection of Willow Creek and essentially a buffer that goes along with Willow Creek. I would like to mention that we have had an environmental consultant look at the site, Mr. Paul Niels from Orion Environmental, and he has prepared a letter in support of the proposed development and has identified that it is in conformity with the growth plan, is consistent with the PPS, and conforms with both the township and the county official plans. In terms of your official plan, it's designated rural, and your rural designation does permit some small-scale commercial uses in the rural designation. And based on the criteria that establish what is a small-scale commercial use, this proposed use would fall under that umbrella of a small-scale commercial use. It has a low amount of traffic and doesn't have any nuisances with respect to noise or dust or any of those attributes. In terms of the zoning bylaw, you can see the zoning identified on the right-hand side here. The zoning and the scale of it of the map makes it a little bit difficult to read, but the zoning where the building is located is is identified as the agricultural zone. There's also an abutting EP zone that reflects Willow Creek and the areas around Willow Creek. So just in conclusion, we have had an opportunity to review the various planning documents. We reviewed the history of land use on the site. We have consulted with the NVCA and with the County of Simcoe. There will be an NVCA permit required, so any issues associated with Willow Creek and water levels on Willow Creek will be dealt with at the permitting stage through the NVCA. They're not necessarily issues to be dealt with at the zoning amendment stage right now. So prior to any permit, any building permit being received, an NVCA permit will be required as well, because we are within the regulated area of the NVCA. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions should they arise.
Turn to the public first, if there's any questions on this application. Seeing none, any questions from council? Councillor Hannan.
Thank you, Mayor French. I'm the ward councilor there, and I have no objections to that expansion there because I'm familiar with the site, and it won't impact on anybody around there. My question is more to staff. This has been zoned agricultural. It's been used as commercial. Is there any opportunity or any initiative there to recoup the difference that would have been paid in taxes, being that it's commercial and has been operated commercially on agricultural property?
Can I address that question, I think?
If you want to, respond to it.
Through your worship. In terms of assessment, it has been assessed as a commercial business and a commercial operation. They have been paying commercial taxes. The zoning, and we're still trying to get to the bottom of when the commercial use actually came into existence, whether it was prior to 1983, which was the first zoning bylaw for the township, or sometime after. We've got aerial photos back to 89 that show the building there, so we know it's been in existence prior to that. The owner of this property before Mr. Prairie was a landscaping business, and it has been operated commercially since then. What this zoning would do is ensure that it's the correct zoning reflects the use going forward. But specifically to your question, commercial taxes have been paid. I'm not sure of the exact time when that was the case, but I believe as far as you've owned the property, you've been paying commercial taxes, so.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. Appreciate that. I just want to make sure everybody's treated fairly and that you weren't getting away with, or the owner wasn't getting away with paying less taxes when other people are, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you for attending the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and showing an interest in the matter, so thank you. So now we will move in a second to adjourn the public meeting. Coghlan, Hannah? That this public meeting of council held under section 17, 21, and 34 of the Planning Act for the official plan amendment application OP-2018-003 by James Hunter of Skelton Brumwell and Associates on behalf of Jasmina Sheldrake, zoning bylaw amendment application ZB-2018-007 by Jamie Robinson of MHBC Planning Limited on behalf of Jeff Lee and Ed and Nancy DeCorter, and zoning bylaw amendment application ZB-2018-008 by Jamie Robinson of MHBC Planning Limited on behalf of Glen Prairie does now adjourn at 7:05 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. So that meeting is adjourned. And now we'll carry on with some direction on this. In the first direction, the choices are the application be approved, the application be refused, and the application be and the application be referred back to staff. Can I have a mover and a seconder so we can discuss it? Austin and Richie. And maybe for some guidance, if I go to planning, is there a preference of direction to council?
Through your
Russell.
worship, Planning staff have not prepared a recommendation report at this point, so it would really be up to council, whether this be referred back to staff or if council's looking for another.
So, questions? Councillor Hannan.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the outstanding issues that expressed by MTO about the double entrance and the ditch, would we be inappropriate for us to approve it at this time without that being rectified?
If you're looking for staff preference that it be referred back, would be my preference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so would someone like to move and second that it be referred back to staff? Oh, Councillor Austin? Okay. Oh, sorry, I do have a mover and seconder, Austin and Ritchie. But you're both fine with that? Okay, good. Okay, with that, the council having held a public meeting in accordance with section 17 and 21 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13, as amended, on official plan amendment application OP-2018-003 by James Hunter of Skelton, Brummel, and Associates on behalf of Jasmina Sheldrake, having noted correspondence and input received, direct that the application be referred back to staff. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And this recommendation is that this is for the Lee, be received and that a bylaw be submitted to council for consideration. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Hannah and Coughlin. That the report from the senior planner regarding ZB-2018-007 Lee dated September 19, 2018 be received, that a bylaw be submitted to council for consideration and approval, subject to the comments received at the public meeting. Any further questions on this application? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And for our other public one meeting in Glen Prairie, can I have a mover and a second? Hannah and Coughlin. The council having held a public meeting in accordance with section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended, on a zoning bylaw amendment, application ZB-2018-008 by Jamie Robinson of MHBC Planning Limited on behalf of Glen Prairie, having noted correspondence and input received direct. We have three options, and that the application be approved and the appropriate documents be submitted to council for consideration, or the application be refused and the applicant so notified, or the application be referred back to staff. Is there any preference on the mover? Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. Unless staff have any concerns, I think A is the appropriate one.
Okay. And I'll turn to planning. Is there any concerns of the approval of this by council?
Through your worship, from staff's perspective, the only outstanding issue from us is and Mr. Robinson alluded to this, was digging down to the bottom of when that building was legally established and answering the county's question. However, if council is willing to move forward with that, I'm sure we can deal with that after the fact.
Councillor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to Planner Russell. It's always nice to see local businesses expanding and helping them with the timeline to allow them to do so. So just for my own clarification, if we do not refer this back to staff and we simply approve it this evening, there's still an opportunity for staff and council to make sure that the appropriate documents are submitted along the way. Like, we're not skipping a step here is what I'm asking.
Planner Russell?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct, yes.
So with that, I'll read the motion as proposed, that council having held a public meeting in accordance with section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended, on a zoning bylaw amendment application ZB-2018-008 by Jamie Robinson of MHBC Planning Limited on behalf of Glen Prairie, having noted correspondence and input received, direct that the application be approved and that the appropriate documents be submitted to council for consideration. All those in favor? Carried. Minutes. Sorry, we'll move on to previous minutes. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get them on the table? Alan Coghlan. That the minutes of council 8.2 be approved as presented. Any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And it's now an opportunity for question period. And this is where we invite anybody from the public that may have any comment or question regarding matters on the agenda or any other matter, something on the agenda we can probably respond to fairly quickly. Something else we may have to come back to you. But this is an opportunity to come forward and ask a question. Just give us your name and address and please pose the question.
Good evening, Mayor French and Council. Chris Meisner at 80 Idlewood Drive in Midhurst. I've never done this before, so it's my first time here. I moved to Midhurst so I'm going to address the proposed stop signs, 15.1. Proposed stop signs in the Midhurst area, as well as more areas that might be of concern. We moved here 10 years ago, and the number of young families that have moved to Midhurst has grown exponentially, as we're all aware. And I've personally witnessed many near fatal accidents of young children riding bikes right on Frid and Idlewood, as well as along St. Vincent, crossing the road to go to parks and friends' houses. And there's several of us that are really concerned. Many people are just unaware of how to voice their opinion. Friends of ours we have gone through and proposed a four-way stop at the corner of Idlewood and Frid, and we've contacted the township. They put some strips out and they're trying to gather some data, and we don't know where we're at right now. I talked to Councillor Hanna the other day, and he recommended to come here saying these other proposals were on the agenda to come talk about reducing the speed and trying to control the speed limit. Don't know how we proceed, but something we're very concerned about. I witness it. I live right on the corner. I see cars traveling down Frid at ridiculous speeds. I'm sure close to 100 kilometers an hour sometimes, and whipping up at different times. And we're just desperately afraid that something drastic is going to happen in all these little secondary streets, and especially that's a thoroughfare right up to get to pools up that way as well. So just want to bring that to everyone's attention and see how we can proceed with calming traffic, perhaps reducing speed to 40 kilometers an hour, or actually getting people to actually stop and slow down so we don't have to read about it, even just once.
Thank you, and we'll be having a wholesome discussion by council, I'm sure, when we get to that matter on the agenda. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor, and I think Mr. Meisner's not talking about St. Vincent. He's more interested in Frid and Idlewood, that corner there, because a lot of children cross there. But it's interesting that there's a number of people riding bicycles that are traveling on Idlewood and go right through the stop sign right across Frid. So there's also a problem there with a lot of foliage, or if you like, or a big hedge that grows right out pretty close to the road and it blocks the view. I know the Director of Public Works and I had a brief conversation about that corner, so possibly the Director could add some comment, please.
Director Coleman, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor Hanna and our Mr. Meisner. We have received his traffic calming request. I think it was actually your wife that put it in, but same thing, same family. And we are doing the research. The tubes that were out there were traffic counters, so we've counted all 4 legs of the intersection. And you've probably noticed we have the radar board up there now. That actually tracks volume as well as speed going in both directions. So your concern was people coming down the hill. You notice that it's pointing the other way. So people coming down the hill don't know that what their speed is. It tracks it, and we will find that out. Our next step is definitely to sit out there for a bit and track pedestrian movements. And then from there, we have a formula. If you've been through the traffic calming policy, you'll see that there's a formula there that our operations coordinator will plug in the ratings, and it'll determine from there whether that intersection is suitable for an all-way stop.
Yes, follow up.
Thank you very much for addressing that. A question that we do have at times, there's not a lot of traffic all the time as far as volume goes, but the sheer speed of one car coming down there at any point in time is what we're really concerned about. It doesn't take more than one car to have a car accident, unfortunately. And just the sheer number of young families that have moved into probably a 9-house radius of where I live is, I don't know, I would hazard a guess of probably 20 young families in such a small little area. There's been a major turnover in that little area there. And then moving forward to, tracking less kids are going to be outside now, moving into the, summertime is a great opportunity to collect that information. Not so much moving forward. It's going to definitely decrease if we're counting pedestrian traffic. So I appreciate your concerns and your following through. And the diligence, actually, after our first email was sent, we had responses within a day. So it was really nice follow-up, very timely follow-up. Thank you.
So I think at this point, it's probably stay tuned. Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French, to you, to our presenter. Are there sidewalks in the neighborhood?
No, there's 0 sidewalks. And if you look at the number of, our bus stops, there's 2 bus stops, one right at my house for secondary students as well as Catholic board, and just down the road, and the number of kids that are collecting and being actually let off right on Frid, moving up the hill is, it's grown, it multiplies every year with the number of children that are on those bus stops right there, and there's no sidewalks and lots of parks in the area too.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to Director Coleman. When these results do become available to council, and I'm sure we'll receive a report with that, if the traffic, you're saying, but Director Buchanan putting them in, and the formula, should the formula not reach the threshold, will there be other recommendations to council of other ways to calm traffic should it not meet the requirement under the traffic? We've been made aware of a situation, and to have it say, no, it doesn't meet it, but if we could have some other options so that there is something done to make sure that it does change in the area.
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor Coghlan. We could look at other options. At this point, like you mentioned that there's the volume. When we're looking at an all-way stop, it's not necessarily the volume. It's equal amounts of traffic approaching from the intersections. In this case, that has been the case, that we have noticed that people on Idlewood coming from your direction and people coming down Frid, the volume is equal. Of course, coming in from St. Vincent, the volume is much higher, which makes sense because people come in, they turn left, they turn right, and they go straight up the hill. In terms of, we're well aware that the buses stop there as well. I'm thinking this is a good candidate for an all-way stop moving forward, without seeing the final numbers, but what I've seen so far is it's a candidate for an all-way stop.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much for everyone's time.
Thank you for your input. Anybody else have a question? Might have a minute or so left here. Yep. Please come forward, name, address, and please try and keep the question short.
Yes, my name is Bob Copping. I've been a resident, and I own a house for 35 years on St. Vincent Street. just below the golf course. Now, we actually widened the road a bit for a bike lane and a walking lane. It's so dangerous. I'm retired now, and I see things going on down that hill at least 200 kilometers an hour. When they leave the golf course, they just think that's a speedway, and every year there's 6 or 7 accidents on the S-bend. The speed has to stop. My dog is so well trained, if it ever got hit, that driver's not going to come out of the scene. I mean, I can't live with the fact that this is going to happen because there's nothing being done. I've lived there for 35 years. I have never seen the OPP go by once this year. And where are they going? I mean, Bayfield Street, and they just ignore St. Vincent. So just recently, 3 months ago, I've been on a dog and search rescue for Simcoe County, positive ground search. I'm in Jody's Lane, right at the river, and I see cars going by that river, just like I think they're in a hurry going someplace, and the kids were standing at the end of Jody's Lane. I thought, they're going to get hit. But something, either speed signs or something has to be done there. Now, from that section, from the golf course to the S-bend, their speeds of up to 200 kilometers an hour. And I've been driving now for 55 years. I have never seen this before. And it's got to come to an end because I don't think I can handle any more accidents in that area. So I just want to have
No, thank you. And we need your address for the clerk.
733 St. Vincent Street, Springwater.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. And that will definitely lead into the resolutions on the table tonight. So I think that wraps up question period. So committee recommendations. Yeah. Okay, we're going to move item, what item is it, Councillor Hannah? 15.1, if you're following the agenda, we will move it forward. And this is a motion, I assume that's going to be moved by Councillor Hannah. And do we have a seconder? And this is basically to authorize this stuff, okay? Deputy Mayor Allen? So just read the motion so everybody knows what we're going to be talking about and the questions being asked. The council hereby authorizes a stop sign pilot project on St. Vincent Street as follows. 3-way stop at Pools Road and St. Vincent Street. 3-way stop at Jody's Lane and St. Vincent Street. And that this pilot project continue until the end of 2018-2019 school year, with assessment for permanent location to be completed at the end of the pilot project, that a bylaw authorizing such to be presented to council for consideration at the October 3rd, 2018 meeting of council. So questions on this of staff or anyone else you'd like to ask? No. Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor French. I meant to speak with Councillor Hannah earlier, but it slipped my mind. The proposed 3-way stop at St. Vincent and Pools, it's too close to the intersection of St. Vincent and Green Pine. Can I recommend that we move that up to St. Vincent and Waddy?
Councillor Hannah.
I have to, I guess, honor our Director of Public Works opinion. I selected Pools Road only because that's such a busy road and the traffic is very heavy coming down Pools, as you know, pouring out onto St. Vincent. And I just believe that would help the people on Pools Road enter onto St. Vincent Street. The whole objective is just to slow people that are going up and down St. Vincent at a very fast speed. I know the speed monitor might not show that all the time, but I can tell you personally from driving that road frequently that, as was mentioned earlier, you get past if you're not doing, 10 or 15 kilometers over the speed limit between the city of Barrie and those S-curves or even entering into Midhurst itself. But I'll leave that discretion with you as to where you go. As you noted, this is a pilot project, and if it didn't work out at that location, would there be consideration maybe to moving it to pools?
Director Coleman, you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor French. The situation at Pools, though, is unfortunately Green Pine is so close to Pools that by the time you lay out the intersection, the stop bar would be right at Green Pine. And by the time you paint a crosswalk and move the stop bar back, we would be in the middle of the intersection with Green Pine. So it wouldn't physically work. The other option is St. Vincent and Cedar Creek. I'm open to either of those two. And I would go with your recommendation there, what you would prefer to see. I guess the benefit of St. Vincent and Cedar Creek is I believe the Simcoe County Lynx bus stops there now, so that would, if there are people getting on and off, at least they're getting on and off at an all-way intersection as well.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. I think that may be better than Waddy, because you know Waddy's up near the north end, and all you got getting on it at that location is the traffic that's coming in off that's come down Park Trail and entered onto St. Vincent via Waddy. But the majority of the traffic is coming on at Pools, and of course in a hurry to get to work wherever they're going south in the mornings. Getting on to St. Vincent at Pools, I think, it would be, if you put the stop sign there, I think it's too far up the road. You're not going to slow those people down that are entering a Pools. So it either has to be Pools or south of Pools to slow traffic down that's racing down there. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of children on the side of St. Vincent in both those locations waiting for the school buses in the morning.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
I concur that it would be better at Cedar Creek, because the purpose of this is to slow the traffic on St. Vincent, one of the purposes, and it's slowing anyways once it gets to Waddy. So I would think you'd want to have it elsewhere to increase the amount of traffic slowdown.
So maybe just so everybody's keeping their scorecard straight here. So at Cedar Creek, would it still be a three-way? I'm just trying to remember the junction. Okay, so three-ways at Cedar Creek and St. Vincent, and three-way still at Jody's? So that's what it's reading. I just want to double check that
Yes.
we're all on the same wavelength asking the same questions. Okay. So are there other questions on this? I mean, my general comment would be that we need to look at traffic everywhere in our township, because it's interesting as you go around now with the increased traffic. We have a brand new subdivision in Stone Manor Woods, and that trail, or not Marks, is a speedway. And it's going to go by a new park that we're going to have a meeting on next week. And there's going to have to be considerations. I think we really do need to, I'm not sure how we do it. We need to have someone, a traffic expert, because we have a lot of speed issues and lack of sidewalks throughout our township. You know, obviously in areas like Midhurst, we don't have a lot of sidewalks. We don't have sidewalks in Sunnydale, right going through the middle of the center of Vespra. And as it was mentioned, we're having a lot of younger families move to the fresh air of Springwater. And I'm not sure how we're going to match heavy traffic and children and bicycles. But I think it has to be a high priority for the next council to really deal with it, because it's a real problem. It's a problem everywhere. We also have the same issues and concerns in Hillsdale. I mean, you name it. We have problems everywhere. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think part of the problem was mentioned by Mr. Coping, that we can have stop lines, we have speed limits, but if they're not enforced, and we need to try to do something to increase enforcement. The other issue I would just point out to council, if we approve this here tonight, that would be great. And if there's anybody on council that's having second thoughts and we're concerned about approving this, I'd like to discuss it now. So while there's residents here and we don't come back at the next council meeting, we have to approve the bylaw and have to debate it at that time.
Very good point. So is there any other further comments, or Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. And just for clarification, the second three-way stop would then be, I heard a few names tossed around. Is there one that it would be south then? If the traffic is turning south, is there another recommendation to, I mean, the goal is to slow down the traffic, but what is the best solution to that, understanding that pools is not an option anymore?
Maybe Director Coleman, the suggestion right now is at Cedar Creek and Jody's. Does that fit your need for the pilot project? Maybe it'd be the easiest way of asking the question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor French. Both of those would be suitable. Jody's Lane, there isn't as much traffic coming out of Jody's Lane, but I think Councillor Hannah's intention is to get traffic coming northbound to slow down. So that would most likely be the best spot for that.
Good. No, I think, as I said, it's a pilot project, and we may find out, our research may want to move it a block one way or the other, and that's the purpose of this. But I'm definitely very supportive of this motion. So, any other further questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously, just so the people in the audience are aware of that. Because we don't note that on our minutes, unanimous. We're just all in it together here. So we'll go back to our regular scheduled programming. Committee. Oh, sorry. I'll try that one again. I didn't hit the button. So for our home audience, go back to my script here. So the motion will read, the minutes of September 5th, 2018 Finance and Audit Committee meeting be received as information, and that the recommendation from the Finance and Audit Committee as containing items 10.2 through to 10.5 be approved as presented. Moved by Hannah, seconded by Coghlan. Questions? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. So can I make a question or a statement regarding 10.2 at this point, or should I wait?
Oh, okay. Yes, you can.
Okay. I just wanted to point out that in the report on 10.2, one note that the joint compliance audit legal expenses for the first half of this year are already $56,000, and that's just between January and June. And I just wanted to emphasize that to the general public, that our township has spent a lot of money on lawyers' fees on the joint compliance audit expense, and council has no control over that. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, and just to kind of clarify, we're dealing with all items on here, 10.2 to 10.5, and so your comments are appropriate. Is there any other comments on any items 10.2 to 10.5 that anybody else would like to comment on? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor French, because my memory's slipping. I was looking for the note in the minutes from the meeting where we had a slight discussion, if you recall, about water rates, because it's a concern we hear about a lot. And my question that day, as I recall, was that going forward in the future, could we consider, the way I understand our water rate works, there's a base price that everybody pays. Once you go over that base cubic foot amount, the rate goes up. And instead of increasing that rate, maybe keep it the same, and that way it wouldn't be such an impact on people that water their lawns and are also hooked up to sewers because they're charged the extra because they're the sewer rate, even though the water is going on the lawn and not in the sewer. And I just think going forward, if we could consider or determine what the impact would be of not charging the higher rate when you go over the set, I think it's 40 cubic meters that you're allowed at one rate before the price escalates. And if the rest of council agrees that, maybe we could ask for staff to do something in the future to determine what the impact would be by not increasing the rate.
Okay, so just to be clear, we should pull 10.2 as an item. Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and maybe through to CEO Brinley as Director Schmidt is not available. I believe that was one of the options during the water rate meetings with the Snow Valley residents. I think that information is already available for staff or to residents, if we could just have it sent back, or if it's a report that you want. But I believe that was, when council was determining the water rates moving forward, that was one of the options that we didn't choose. So I think the work's already done.
CEO Brinley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Coghlan. Definitely as part of our last rate study, there was a number of options. We also update our rate study regularly. So what we can do is I can talk to the treasurer when he's back and see whether or not that's something we do short term, but it won't be too long before we redo the budget and the actual rate study anyways. We have to do that regularly. It's just that, are you looking at something that's done immediately or reviewed immediately, or something when we do the next rate study, which I think we do about every 2 years?
If you're asking me,
Councillor
I think it's just something we need to do in the future, and it was just a discussion we had at the Finance Audit Committee to deal with the rates that we're charging for water, and it would be probably in our next budget where we make that determination. To be honest with you, I can't understand why when you go over a set amount, the rate goes up. I would think the more you use, maybe the rate should go down, but I know we got to pay for the product we provide, and maybe that's not appropriate. I don't know the answer.
Okay, we're having quite a deep discussion, water rates. So do we want to pull it, and do you want to kind of accept the report and make a recommendation that staff look into it, or do we just want to receive it? Okay, all right. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Am I allowed at this point to make some comments on 10.3?
Sure, yes, please.
Okay.
Are they comments, or do you want to pull it for discussion and a separate resolution?
Comments.
Okay, please proceed.
So I read over the financial review, and in particular the 2017 BMA municipal study, which is in which our finances for the township were compared to other communities that took part in the BMA municipal study. So three things that jumped out at me are that on our net municipal levy per capita, so the tax rates, our taxes are lower by comparison. Secondly, we are much lower than other municipalities in terms of spending per capita on parks and recreation, and the same for libraries. So I just think with those things in mind, and on top of that, we have a higher than average household income, higher than average across the township in terms of house prices, home values. With all that information in mind, when it comes to budgeting, perhaps the new council might take these things into consideration when we decide what we're going to be spending money on in 2019.
Thank you. Any other comments on any of these items? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. So now we'll move on to correspondence and information items. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Guess we want to stay here all night. Alan? Are you seconding it? Councillor Coghlan? That corresponds to information items 11.2 through to 11.5 be received as information. We want to pull any of these and comment on. Councillor Austin,
11.5, please, a question?
is it a question or,
It's a question?
please?
Okay. Thank you, through you, Mayor French, to the Director of Parks and Recreation. What I want to know is, in the letter from the Barrie North Tennis Club, it wasn't clear to me, and maybe you can help me. Are they asking for approval to build their new facility, their clubhouse, on township land? And are they also hoping to get some funding from the township? I couldn't see anything specific. I'm just wondering if that's what their intentions were. Do they want to build their new facility on township land, and are they looking for us to share in the funding?
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Austin. Question one, yes, they are looking to replace the existing building that is on township property with a new built structure versus the construction portable trailer structure that's there now to meet their expanded needs. Partly they would, if there's funding available, through a partnership. They would like to entertain that, obviously. One thing I have proposed to them in initial discussions is the potential of us partnering with them to help to facilitate our needs for the new Midhurst Pavilion by providing washrooms with external entrance, storage, and a heated facility that would serve the winter use as well as the summer use. So we're having those initial discussions, and subject to council's approval to continue with that. And if they believe that's a worthwhile venture, we will continue to have those discussions with them. But basically, whether we partner or not, they would like to replace the existing clubhouse.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I believe the letter we received is asking us to determine if we want to support it. And I think we should support it, because if we don't support it, it won't happen. And if it happens, then basically Springwater is getting a building and somebody else is going to pay for it. And maybe it'd be a joint venture, and maybe there'll have to be some fundraising. But I think if we don't agree to do this going forward, or at least explore it, it's not going to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie?
Just want to add to what the Director Belcourt said. I think, a good idea there with your new ice pad there. You had a building where there's washroom facilities there. It could be a joint venture. It sounds like I would support that. It would work very well. So I look forward to something coming down the line. So.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. No, I think the partnership has worked out well with them, and it does provide the opportunity of, partnerships, and I think we're going to see more of those in the future. So let's see where this proceeds to, and I'm sure Director Belcourt will be coming back with some recommendations. So no further comments. All those in favor? Carried. Now we'll move on to some action reports and final acceptance. Black Creek, can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Austin and Allen. That the report from the Director of Public Works regarding final acceptance of Black Creek Estates Phase 3 be received. That a bylaw for the final acceptance of Black Creek Estates Phases 1, 2, and 3 be presented to Council for consideration. That pending the passage of the bylaw, the Director of Public Works be authorized to sign the certificate of final acceptance. Any questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And the next item is an official plan amendment. Mitchell application. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Allen and Coghlan. That the report from the planner regarding OP-2018-001 dated September 19, 2018 be received. That council adopt the official plan amendment as it is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2014, conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe 2017, conforms with the County of Simcoe official plan and Township of Springwater official plan, and that the amendment be submitted to the County of Simcoe for approval, subject to minor modifications. Is there any questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And now we'll move on to the draft fireworks bylaw. Can we get it on the table with a mover and a seconder? Hannah and Coghlan. That the report from the clerk regarding draft fireworks bylaw, comments from public consultation dated September 19, 2018 be received. That either that council hereby requests that the draft fireworks bylaw be presented for consideration, or that the council does not wish to enact a fireworks bylaw, or the council refer the proposal bylaw to staff for amendments in accordance with council direction. So before we choose an option, I open the floor for comments or questions. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. And for those who didn't like this bylaw, I'll take the heat for it because I brought it forward to council based on public concerns and complaints about excessive fireworks at all hours of the day and night and so on. I think the staff have done an excellent job, along with our fire chief, preparing a reasonable document. We all know that we're a mix of rural and urban, and different things take place in different locations, but we don't want another Fort McMurray with somebody setting the forest on fire. We got residential areas where people are letting fireworks off, but the bottom line is, the way I read this report, and I think people have misunderstanding of it, it doesn't impact, the way I read it, personal fireworks and personal property in your backyard, family enjoyment. We're not trying to impact family enjoyment, we're just trying to make people responsible under certain dates, under certain hours of the day. There are some regulations where if it's commercial type fireworks and so on, where people would have to come forward with some assurance to protect their liability or pay for a permit. But other than that, it's just a guideline. Currently, without this bylaw, we cannot stop fireworks during fire bans. And if we got a fire ban on, that's because we don't want to set Springwater on fire, but yet we allow fireworks. So we need to do something, and I think, well, some of the responses we got back from residents were mixed. We got people who don't want it, we got people who do want it. I think some of the way I read, some of the people who don't want it, I don't think they understand. We're not trying to impact personal fireworks in your backyard. We're trying to make people responsible, encourage public safety, and have limited dates and hours. The only thing I would say that maybe we might want to consider is something in the bylaw, an option there that if somebody wants to have fireworks on one of the days other than what's been in the bylaw, you come forward with a request because it's a special event or a celebration and you would like to have fireworks on a certain date. I think if we added that to the bylaw, I don't see how anybody would be too upset with this bylaw.
Thank you. Are there comments on this? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through to the fire chief. In a situation right now, if there's a call where there's fireworks going off, what happens? Is the police respond to this situation? Walk us through that situation like that.
Chief Gavay.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Ritchie, and no disrespect, but I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that question. Fire's only real experience is if fireworks actually do set fire to something, in which case we'd respond as we would to any other emergency call. But I believe it'll be more of an issue around a noise complaint with the lack of bylaws that we have within the township. So perhaps if I may redirect to my colleague, thank you very much, the Director of Planning Services.
Thank you, Mayor French. Yeah, typically what would happen is we would receive a bylaw complaint relative to noise and lighting off the fireworks. If there's a bylaw enforcement officer on duty, staff can go and attend the property just to gauge what's happening and try to get a sense as to the violation. If there is not an officer on duty, then it would have to refer to the OPP and the police to go and respond to such a complaint.
I respond to that, Mayor French?
Yes.
Do we get many complaints at all regarding this?
Director Spagno?
Through Mayor French to Councillor Ritchie, off the top of my head, I cannot think of too many complaints, but I'd have to go and discuss this with the bylaw enforcement officers, just to see what the complaint activity has been with this. But since I've been here, I haven't really received too many fireworks complaints, official fireworks complaints through the bylaw enforcement complaint system.
Okay, I'm gonna ask CEO Brindley, I think I wanted to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Ritchie. We don't get a lot, but when we do, they tend to be hot spots. We tend to have individual households that tend to violate more than others. So it's not across the board within across Springwater, but there tend to be some hot spots where certain residents do take liberty in terms of what days, or even 2, 3, 4 in the morning when they like to light off those fireworks. But they tend to be sort of isolated hot spots. The hot spot's not as in fire, but hot spots in terms of complaints.
Follow up, yes.
And through to the fire chief, how many instances have we had then with, where we've been called out on a fire ban and it was a cause of fireworks?
Chief Cavey?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Ritchie. Unfortunately, as I didn't anticipate that specific question, I can only basically relate to how many calls have we responded to as a result of fireworks this year, which July 1st resulted in a fire in the Simcoe County bush, and that came in at a very dark period of the day during the night, and was particularly difficult to fight due to terrain, lack of natural light, and access reasons. So there's only one so far this year. Whether or not it was in a fire ban, I'd have to go away and figure out what those dates were, and then come back to council if council so directs me.
Fire chief, was that due to the fireworks being put off, or was it some other, well, it was related to fireworks?
Chief Cavey?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Ritchie, absolutely. And I must admit, as much as I didn't enjoy being at the front of that firefight with our firefighters, the person that did actually cause the fire through their somewhat ill-advised use of fireworks did stick around, did call 911. So I really did appreciate that part. But yes, it was directly due to the use of consumer fireworks, not for a public display, so just a private individual.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and I'll follow up on that question first, and then I do have a few others. So understanding that in the last year there has been one fire call, are you able to suggest in the last 5 years or the last 10 years in Springwater Township? Because I'm very curious. I understand there is one, and in speaking with others, this is the first that they remember, or that there could be, or that there has been.
Director Cavey?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Coghlan. So again, I'd have to go away and run those statistics. However, they would be flawed for the simple reason that the majority of these happen at night. For the obvious effect of fireworks in a dark setting. That's when they're best viewed. So any grass fire or bush fire that we would attend at night, we don't typically tend to go back the next day to see if we can find evidence of a firework. We just put out the fire. So I'd say that any statistics we gathered would probably be quite inaccurate.
Thank you. And then the other question, so understanding that the bylaw was presented, which is being presented tonight, it's being suggested that it's not going to impede or impact personal use or any personal fire shows or family celebrations. Could you speak to that? Because I do believe that the perception or understanding in the public is that it does in fact impede 100% on that, other than a permit purchased in order to do so.
So who would like that? Director Cavey, please.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Coghlan again. Absolutely, I think for the average person, probably myself, before I got into municipal line of work, I probably wouldn't have read into it as much as I do now. I can say with all certainty, based on the copy that I've seen, that the private individual that wished to go out to the local store to buy fireworks, not flying lanterns, you understand, because those would be banned, but regular consumer fireworks would certainly be able to hold, private display, as long as it wasn't for commercial purposes, within the dates specified within the bylaw. There's no application for a permit fee, that's for commercial display. So if residents think back to the large event we held in the back of the township office premises, that was done by
a contractor, basically somebody who's licensed and trained specifically to let off large fireworks. One of the things we enjoy about that process is that the federal government, through Natural Resources Canada, lays out the requirements for those displays, and part of that is risk management. So we look at the size of the fireworks being used, where they're likely to fall, wind directions, patrolling after the event for fires. And really, I think the permit fee around those is more to sort of cover off our costs, which tend to run into several hours of staff time from site visits and plans review and paperwork and that kind of thing. I think we'd still be losing money. But really, for the private individual, there are certain things that you can't do, certain areas where you can't let them off, or you can't buy and let off flying lanterns. Those would be the only impacts on ordinary residents.
Follow-up, Councillor Coghlan?
And just as follow-up, you did say that unless it wasn't one of the 2 prescribed days, so residents are able to light off fireworks when? In their own backyard?
Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Coghlan. Again, I don't have that part completely open in front of me, the whole document to look at easily. However, it does say that you're not allowed to set them off during a fire ban, and I believe you're able to set them off on the days of Victoria Day or Canada Day. But if the weather is inclement, makes it impractical, then Victoria Day or Canada Day shall be included, the next day after those. And after that, I think I'd have to refer to the CAO, who had a little more involvement.
Actually, I think we'll refer to the clerk.
Thank you, through you. Yes, it is just Victoria Day and Canada Day for any display, whether private or public.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you. So what I'm understanding is the suggestion that this does not impede people's private shows. So those who want to celebrate their children's birthday or their grandma's wedding anniversary, if it doesn't happen to fall on one of those 2 days, you are not permitted, and you are therefore in contravention of a bylaw, and therefore would be reported potentially. And so really it does, unless you plan on doing on those 2 days, this bylaw does 100% impede individuals' ability to have private fireworks.
Chief Gavay?
I'd say it restricts the amount of days that they could do it in, certainly, but it's a draft bylaw, so if that wasn't the will of council, then it could certainly tweak it any way it liked for days that they could let off fireworks.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, through you, Mayor French. We could not, as a council, open up the comments that were submitted, which I believe was some 22 pages of it, until sometime early afternoon today. So I did not get a chance to go through those in any great detail. Maybe Clerk Chaperon, can you summarize for us what the input was from the public, pro and con, with respect to this? There seems to be confusion, not only in the public with respect to the public's interpretation of this, but council's interpretation of this. So I'm finding it rather confusing.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. To provide a synopsis of the comments would be very difficult. They range from extremely negative to positive in regards to the bylaw, various aspects of the bylaw. I wouldn't be able to narrow down anything. It was quite a wide variety of comments that were received. I believe there was something to close to 60 comments in those pages. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to provide a synopsis of it. In order to clarify, bylaws are written quite complex to ensure that they conform to laws. So in order to hopefully ease the reading of residents or anybody looking into the bylaw further, I did put a copy of the report on the website with the bylaw, so that residents were able to see a bit of a further breakdown of what the bylaw was actually stating. But the comments, some of them did come back seeming that there was a bit of confusion in what actually was being regulated.
Councillor Hannan, then Councillor Coghlan.
I'll go back to my earlier statement where I said this bylaw, in my opinion, does not impact private people using fireworks on their own private property, except that they're limited to days, and I would suggest that we could overcome that by putting an option in there. You could request, as was pointed out, you could request an opportunity to have fireworks on somebody's birthday or wedding celebration or whatever, and you could make that request through the township. That way the fire department would be aware of what was taking place. But other than that, the way I read this bylaw, and the CO might want to provide whatever comments he likes, because he's one of the people involved, as was the clerk in the writing of this, that it doesn't impact private people having fireworks in their backyard unless it falls on a day they're not allowed to, and falls during the hours where they're not allowed to.
Yeah, I think just for clarification, the only days that are permitted under this bylaw are Victoria Day and Canada Day, period. And so.
That's my suggestion, we need to change those. put
Okay,
an
no,
option
no,
in
that's
there.
what I'm saying. So we may want to, at the end of this discussion, we may want to send some of those comments back to staff so they massage this so it's more in keeping with what the expectation of the residents are. I think, Councillor Austin, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor French. Two things. I was going to comment on the clerk's response as far as summarizing the comments. I did have a chance to go through them, but I had to read them quickly, the comments today. And yes, to be able to summarize them would be greatly difficult, as the clerk explained, because they were all over the map in terms of some positive, some negative, and the reasons varied quite greatly. And as has been pointed out, some of them indicated that they had read things into the bylaw that weren't there. One thing that I would want to suggest is, as Councillor Hanna suggested, that anybody who wanted a special permission to have a fireworks display other than the 2 designated days, making an application. But I think that application or that permit perhaps should be a no-fee thing or a very low fee. Is that what you're suggesting, Councillor Mann? No fee, but you have to have special permission, right? Because I certainly read the first part of the comments, the first 25 or so were violently against the bylaw altogether. And then the other ones, I started to say, yes, I'm glad to see that this is happening because it's really been a problem for me and my family, a lot of disturbances for the, a variety of reasons. So I was seeing strong feelings on both sides. So this is a contentious issue, and it's going to be difficult to make a decision. So I was thinking perhaps tonight might not be the night to pass it, that it needs to be looked at more thoroughly, and maybe council take the time, because as we said, we only got the comments this afternoon, but take the time to look through them and try to come up with a summary on our own, and then come back and rediscuss this.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to council. I did have the time, I did read the comments, and I've also listened to the residents over the last, this has been out in the public for a long time, and I'd like to say kudos to staff for getting it in the paper and getting it on the website, because there was a lot of correspondence throughout the communities and correspondence back to staff. I will not be supporting this bylaw on fireworks or any bylaw on fireworks that restricts people from having fireworks in their own backyard. If we can create another mechanism to have fireworks banned during a fire ban, that makes sense to me. That is simply safety, and that is common sense. I do not believe that this impedes, for example, barking dogs. I know our bylaw responds to barking dogs all the time. Neighbors are constantly complaining about the noise, the issues, the biting, the dangers, and the car accidents that are going to be caused by dogs being on the road. And I don't see this council wanting to ban dogs from Springwater either. We have to allow people to be responsible citizens. We have to allow people to work together and to notify. I mean, anytime we have fireworks, we let all our neighbors know what's going on, and the community comes out to watch it. I think that this is impeding on people's ability to be responsible citizens. We know that this Springwater is full of people who own houses, who are capable of owning a house, getting to work every day to pay for their house and pay their taxes. So if they're responsible enough to do those types of things, I do believe we have to allow people to govern themselves. This, to me, is just jumping far too much into the lives of people, and it is, I do not foresee anyone, when they light off a fireworks show, thinking on Wednesday, I need to go into the municipality, and how long is that turnover? Nor do I see us having the enforcement staff available, because if the fireworks go off on a Friday or Saturday, the phone call comes into the municipality on a Monday, maybe bylaw goes out, and who knows what our response time will be on that. And then all of a sudden it becomes a civil issue between two neighbors. No, I didn't light off fireworks. Yes, you did, or it was passed. We have a noise bylaw in place already where no excessive noise after 11 o'clock. We already do have provisions. I do agree that there are municipalities, tiny, Wasaga Beach, who have massive amounts of rentals that do need bylaws like this in place to make sure that those renting or those coming to there's fireworks every weekend, every Friday and Saturday night. Of course, you have to be respectful to the residents. When there's a problem, you do create a solution. I do not see this being brought up by bylaw because of a massive amount of bylaw complaints. This is not brought up by fire because of a massive amount of accidents. I'm not suggesting that we wait for a giant fire to happen, but I think by creating a ban on fireworks during a fire ban does make sense. But creating this bylaw where we as residents are only allowed to have fireworks in our own property 2 days a year is not something I will support.
Thank you for those comments. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Through you, Mayor French. Director Spagnell, have we had complaints about fireworks through bylaw? And what have those, what has been the volume and what has been the type of complaints? Has it been noise, at the time of night? Can you just illuminate?
Director Spagnell.
Thank you, Mayor French, to Deputy Mayor Allen. As I said, I really can't think off the top of my head right now of a large volume of complaints. I think I would have to refer back to CAO Brindley's comments about maybe there are hot spots. The majority of the complaints we do receive are related to dogs barking and zoning issues and things of that nature. So off the top of my head, I can't really give you an idea as what the volume is as in numbers unless I go back and speak to the bylaw enforcement officers to get an idea as to what we're dealing with volume-wise.
Follow up.
Thank you. So just follow on CAO Brindley. When you say they're hot spots, so complaints come in vis-a-vis those hot spots because of the lateness of setting off fireworks or the frequency? Or I'm trying to understand the degree to which the public has complained to the township about this issue and what the nature of the complaints have been.
CAO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the Deputy Mayor. By all means, there haven't been numerous complaints there, but there have been certain locations within the municipality. Now, whether this also relates to neighbor versus neighbor, but it's an issue of both timing and an issue of noise. But it is, I can't think of anything this year. Probably it's not fair with Director Spagnell because these complaints probably are a year or two old, the last time I've heard them. But they do exist, but they're not a flood. They are periodically within different communities that we have. The most recent I can think of was in the Midhurst area. But there's not a lot, but there are complaints we receive.
Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. Again, I brought this forward as a future consideration based on complaints that I get. Ward 5 is probably the most densely populated ward in the township. It's not rural like where other councillors may not get the complaints. I brought it forward out of responsibility for safety and for the residents who I represent. If this council doesn't want to support it, as I say, we're a mix of urban and rural, and it's difficult to have one bylaw affect one part of the township and not the other. But I think we have a responsibility. When we got safety issues and concerns, we can sit here and say we're not going to support it. Well, that's up to the people who don't want to support it. But I'm saying that this is an actual complaints that I receive frequently. I brought it forward, and staff did a good job of writing a bylaw. So other than that, that's the best I can do.
Thank you. Councillor Collins, do you have a comment?
It's more of a comment question. The bylaw that we have in place now, would it be feasible that we would be able to enforce a bylaw like this?
Director Spagnol, with that, since we have two enforcement officers, are we able to enforce?
Thank you, Mayor French, through to Councillor Coghlan. Now, are you speaking, just for clarification, the draft bylaw that's before us for consideration?
No, I think there was a comment made that, you know, if it happened Friday, we wouldn't do it till Monday. Well, we're covering more hours now, is my understanding. CEO Brindley wants to comment first.
Thank you, Mr. Perhaps I'll tackle this. With the current staff we have in terms of enforcement, example, because we're designating 2 evenings, we can designate an officer for the 2 evenings. And that's the easy part of this, is that since we're only having a very short window till 11 o'clock on 2 days, we can't enforce it. It's when it becomes multiple days, that's the challenge we have enforcing it, because currently right now, the way we have in terms of evening work, it's Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and then all day Saturday, all day Sunday, well, Sunday and Saturday, in terms of the 2 officers we have, and then we have all day service. If it's 2 nights, it's easier to police or to do enforcement. It's when it's multiple nights, it becomes a challenge.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you. So through you to CEO Brindley. So if this bylaw was to be amended to allow residents to seek a permit to have fireworks on any day other than sort of the other 363 days a year, we would then have to put bylaw on, or I don't understand how we would enforce something like that.
CEO Brindley?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Colgan, the difference there is that if, say, Mr. Smith at 125 Smith Street asked for a permit, and then we would know if the fireworks went off incorrectly. So it's actually, you get policed more by your neighbors because the fact that we know the only show in town is at your address. So it's not as hard to police because you're the only one doing the fireworks. However, if you allow it on multiple nights, then it's harder to police because then it's a human resource issue that we can't be there all the time if there's numerous people on numerous nights.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Can't the bulk of, thank you, through your Mayor French, can't the bulk of the complaints being noise after a certain hour be addressed by the noise bylaw? Just in making sure that people, if they have a problem with fireworks after 11 o'clock, I believe it is, that they report that as a violation of a noise bylaw.
Comment, CEO Brindley or Director Spagnol?
Through your worship, that's what we do now, but the challenge is this is more, I would say, boots and, belts and suspenders, where we have more protection in terms of fining ability and those kind of things, and also, as I was saying, more ability to charge than just straight noise.
We'll follow on, please.
Follow up?
We'll follow on, but I'm hearing the statistics don't require any more because we haven't had more complaints about other things other than noise, and they haven't been that frequent.
CEO Brindley?
Mr. Mayor, the bylaw also covers new luminaries. It also it's more reaching than just the issue of the noise. Yes, the noise at time, but also the different days it's on. But it also covers luminaries, which is one of our bigger concerns as well.
Okay, I guess my comments, generally, it'd be nice to suggest everyone in the township is responsible. They aren't. That's why we have a whole list of bylaws. It's the only reason we have any bylaws. It's the only reason we have any laws is that that small percentage don't respect their neighbor. And this one here, for the most part, my only question is when I look at firecrackers, what are we meaning by that? Because, but that's why I'm asking the question. So I think that would need a little more work. Shall not set off any firecracker of the township. And CEO Brindley will be responding. But I have some other comments kind of first. And I think it does need to be opened up for obviously private celebration if we're going to do it. And I think the only other comment I had on it, yeah, obviously it would have to be done in a permit basis. And those are the two areas that kind of concern me. I don't like the idea of adding bylaws, but sometimes when a problem grows, we have no choice. So with that, CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason we mentioned firecrackers, they are illegal in, I believe, Canada, Ontario for sure, but that doesn't stop anyone driving up from Florida on I-75 and going to Crazy Joe's or a number of these places and picking up things called cherry bombs and other things, illegally bringing them across the border and setting them off. So as you recall, probably as a child, as a child in the early 70s and late 60s, I remember firecrackers probably being illegal, probably in the late 60s, but and then my U.S. relatives bringing them up afterwards. But the firecrackers are still available in the U.S. and being brought up illegally, and that's why we still mention them, because they still exist.
Councillor Ritchie.
Mayor French, let's just role place this. So, okay, somebody brings up some cherry bombs and whatever else from the States, and they set them off, and the neighbor calls, the police show up. This is the way it would work now, right? The police show up, what's going to happen? They're going to be charged with a nuisance. It's going to be dealt with. How much do we pay the OPP now a year? A lot of money. That's what we're paying to already have a service already in place. So it's already being addressed. I agree with Councillor Coghlan that on a fire ban, if somebody's using it, you should be penalized. But other than that, I think it's already being addressed. Maybe we need to bring the OPP here and have a little talk with them.
Well, I think it's more than just that particular issue, you know, because one of the ones that's outlined in here, and you know, the flying lanterns, I mean, they cause a fire hazard generally, and they're becoming banned more and more. Anyway, we've had some concerns. We have a draft bylaw here, and we have three options. Councillor Han and then Councillor Coghlan.
If there's people in this council that's not going to support this fire ban or fireworks during the rest of the year, think about what during fire ban and also flying lanterns. They're both covered in this bylaw. So if you vote this bylaw down, does that mean you're going to let people use these flying lanterns that float through the forest and cause forest fires? So I'm going to ask for a recorded vote. I'm supporting this because I think council needs to have the courage to do the things that are right.
Okay, Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French. I recall a discussion earlier about flying lanterns. Is there anything already in a bylaw about flying lanterns? And then firecrackers are already illegal at the federal level, correct? So it's already illegal in Springwater to use firecrackers? Okay.
Okay, CEO Brindley.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I actually do want to comment based on the fact that we do appreciate the comments. Councillor Coghlan alluded to it before, is that this is a significant issue in the community. Actually, I just want to thank all the residents for the comments received, the pro and con to the bylaw. It's probably one of the, you know, it sounds odd, but it has garnered the most interest I've seen in a number of issues in a while. You know, we've had some land use issues, but you know, I appreciate the comments from the public because it does help us make either write better bylaws or not write bylaws.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
Through you, Mayor French, thank you. But I think we've seen from discussion tonight that there are probably areas in the bylaw that if any council member was thinking of supporting it, need to be tweaked and tuned because the way it's written, it is restricted to those 2 days, so it's quite restrictive. The only way I could support this would be looking at option C, with referring it back to staff to be able to make some adjustments to the draft bylaw to take another look at it, and reading the comments that were sent back.
Councillor Coghlan, I think I missed you.
Thank you, Mayor French. And the avenue for lanterns and fire ban, there would be opportunity at a separate time to have fireworks during a fire ban restricted and to have lanterns restricted. Is that correct?
CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Coghlan. We can either do it through a separate bylaw or open air burn policies. We could, when we revise some of our burn policies, we could look at that as well. There could be other opportunities, yes.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. I'm in agreement with Deputy Mayor Allen, that I would like to be referred back to staff, but I would also like it to be referred back, the public consultation comments received in particular, referred back to council, because as Deputy Mayor Allen pointed out, we didn't get these until late this afternoon, and there are lots of them, and there's a lot of detail, a lot of emotion in them, and I would myself like more time to study it thoroughly, analyze it, and think about it a little bit more. You know, review the bylaw again, take into consideration, you know, the options that we've discussed tonight, and again, refer it back to staff, and then come back and discuss this when we've all had time to give it a lot more thought. So I would support referring it back to staff and to council.
Thank you. And yeah, I think there are some definitely minor adjustments or whatever, or clarification made. I mean, I'd feel more comfortable if it did go back, take the comments we made and come back and see if we can agree to a bylaw or not. Because right now, I think in its current form, you know, it's very restrictive, too restrictive, and it needs to be dealt with. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor French. I can't recall in the initial report, did we do a survey of what other bylaws exist in other municipalities in Simcoe with respect to this?
Does anyone see, Brindley, do you have information on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to the Deputy Mayor. We didn't do a complete review, but the bylaw you see here is based on bylaws that currently exist within Simcoe County. There are other municipalities with almost identical bylaws.
Just to follow on, please. And did we run this by any external legal counsel just to see the legality and enforceability of this draft bylaw?
C.O. Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the Deputy Mayor, no, because the bylaw we had, the parent bylaw, actually had legal review. I just don't have at my fingertips what municipality, but the previous bylaw had legal review. The only thing that we added was additional word from the fire chief with respect to compliance with federal regulations, but no, sir.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French, through to C.O. Brindley. You just made reference to the previous bylaw. What did you mean by that?
C.O. Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Austin, I meant the previous bylaw from the other municipality, like another bylaw that we used as the mother bylaw per se.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, Hannah and Coghlan. Would the mover and seconder support the third option that council refer the proposal bylaw to staff for amendments in accordance with the information and direction that we did provide this evening, and see what they come back with?
I would.
Okay.
I can remove myself, I can vote against it still, but
Yeah,
it's
I
up
mean,
to
you
you
can.
procedurally.
Do you want to stay as the mover? And yeah, okay. So all those in favor? Sorry? Yes. Yeah.
Can I ask for a potential adjustment, amendment to, or? I would just like the, refer back to staff, I would like to have it included in that, an indication of what other bylaws exist along these lines in other municipalities.
Does that need, I don't think that needs to be part of the resolution. I think we've given you a number of things to look at, and one of the, I guess, coming back to council would be, you know, because I think we have an all encompassing in accordance with council direction, and if our direction is for you to bring back copies of other municipalities with firework bylaws, they could be included in that report. Is that correct? C.O. Brindley? Okay. Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. And in the comments, it does, one of them does speak to an existing Springwater bylaw, and I believe it was 94. And I would just like clarification as to whether that's still in place in Springwater, or if this is just misinformation.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you. I did look into that comment, and the bylaw was repealed at some point in the mid-2000s. So that bylaw is no longer in existence.
Councillor Coghlan?
I think maybe to the betterment of information, why was it repealed and how restrictive was our existing bylaw?
So maybe that could be included with the comments back from staff. So I think we've given you lots of information to come back with on the amendments. Madam Clerk?
And thank you. And Councillor Hannah has requested a recorded vote. Is that still your wish?
I think if we're going to send it back to staff, I don't need a recorded vote. I want a recorded vote if people are going to be supporting what we need to do here.
Okay, all those in favor, of referring back to staff? Opposed? Carried. Okay, the administrative lower level space accommodation, to get it on the table, can I have a mover and a seconder? Alan, Hannah. That the report from the Director of Recreation Parks and Properties regarding the Administrative Center lower level space accommodation construction contract award dated September 19, 2018 be received, and that Les Bertram and Sons, 1985 Limited, be awarded the contract for the construction of the Administrative Center lower level space accommodation in the amount of $199,550 plus taxes. Questions of Director Belcourt? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French, to you too, Director Belcourt. First, who are SRM Architects Incorporated? Do we pay them a fee to act as independent consultants to review bids? And is this a standard procedure in the township? It's the first time I've ever seen something like this.
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Worship, through to Councillor Austin. SRM Architects, Inc. Were the successful proponent when we went out for a request for proposal for design and create the specification and drawings for the works required for the lower level. And it is standard practice to have the architect of record review the bids to ensure compliance with all facets of the tender docs.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
Through your Mayor French, what would be the timing of this starting and being completed, please?
Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor Allen. It's proposed to commence late fall, early winter, and it's about a 6 to 8 week project.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Okay. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. So now we're moving on to the Springwater Swing. And funds raised from that. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Coghlan, Hannah. The report from the Recreation and Special Events Coordinator regarding the 2018 Springwater Swing Golf Tournament dated September 19, 2018 be received. The proceeds from the Springwater Swing Golf Tournament be allocated as follows, and we have to choose some numbers: Community Assistance Program, charitable organizations, and physician recruitment. And further, that disbursement of the above noted funds be in accordance with township protocol. So we have about $30,000. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Just for clarification, we see in the report that $30,842 for this last tournament, but that means the accumulated golf tournament proceeds, we're told, is $47,295. Does this motion refer to allocating the $47,295 cumulative funds, or just the $30,842?
CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to the Deputy Mayor. It's my understanding that although the number is dealt with as an aggregate, there was guidance given at the last tournament in terms of where the funds were to go. That said, council always has the option of reallocating that pot of money depending on where the need is. But right now, I guess our Director of Finance is looking for at least some direction in terms of which accounts to put that $30,000 in. That's based on this year's golf tournament.
We'll just follow on then, if I may, then really what we're talking about then is approximately $17,000 of the accumulated $47,000 that I'm hearing from you has some informal allocation remaining to it. And if that is the case, I'd like to know what that is, because it impacts potentially how we look at the remaining $30,000.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the WR, unfortunately, I don't have that information at my hands right now. And I wouldn't say informal. Council did provide direction last time. I just don't know what accounts they were applied to.
I'm not sure the report, and I meant to ask this before and I didn't. I think we should be dealing with the proceeds from this year. And we do have surplus. I think there was allocations, but obviously it hasn't been a lot of uptake, I assume by the Community Assistance Program, for example. Some of the other ones are going to be obvious. I can't recall, what is the request for physician recruitment? I'm just trying to remember what, it was at 85, yeah. So 8540. So, oh, sorry, it's right. No, that's community, that's the community assistance. Okay. I thought for some reason, it was, for some reason I thought it was going to be higher. Okay. I thought it was going to be 8,500, but if 8,000 is the request, that's fine. So I think that one, you know, I think we're supportive of that again. So I think maybe that number can be assigned. So how do we, how much do we want to put into the community assistance program? And then the rest in the general category of charitable organizations such as Food Bank or whatever else may come along. CEO Brindley?
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. The staff report, probably that middle category, charitable organizations, might be retitled as charitable and community organizations, because I believe it was a wish by this council that it be a bit broader.
Okay, with that in mind, are we kind of in agreement to slot in the 8,000 for the physician recruitment? So, Councilor Ritchie?
In regards, thank you, Mayor French. In regards to physician recruitment, I'd like to see some money go to the physician recruitment in the north then. And how much, I don't know. Like, so if we took, and this is just a suggestion, if we gave Barrie 8,000, we set aside 2,000 for the Midland, because there are doctors coming up to that Midland area, and there's a good number of people still migrating to go to Midland to see doctors up there from the Elmville area. So we have a responsibility here in the south as well as in the north. And the north, the physician recruitment up in the north, I can't think of his name now, but they've done very, very well. Yes, those doctors are not coming, they haven't come to Elmville, but they're at the hospital in Midland. So if you want to go to the Emerge up there, it's still a benefit to us, and I think we should keep our toe in the door there, that we do that. I'm just throwing out $2,000. It could be more or less. Suit yourself, but I think we should be doing that. That's the long and the short, Mayor French.
My suggestion, I think it should be 11,000, because I think we did discuss, you know, last year, yeah, you know, I thought they were going to come request something like 2,500, but they never did a presentation. So you know, from Midland, Barrie always presents kind of information. We haven't had something, because I know there's been restructuring in Midland, so I'd support 11,000 as a bucket.
I know there's some doctors going to be retiring at the end of this year, and there's a lot, those doctors are affecting a lot of people in the Elmville area. So I did put a call into Dave Gravel. He wouldn't even return my call. Like, I don't know why. Maybe we got to chase the guy down or something, but we should do something.
Okay, so are we agreement to put a bucket in there with knowing that 8's going to?
Yes.
Yeah, because for some reason I'm thinking it's 85, so I'd sooner leave 11 in there. Just for, yes, Councilor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. I wasn't I didn't know that council tonight was going to be allocating more than what was suggested in the staff report. There are community initiatives and community programs that I do feel should be funded. And I didn't know, previously we had done that in closed session, and I wasn't sure if you wanted those suggestions now to ensure that they're being allocated as is Councillor Ritchie's, or if you would like to do that at a different time in a closed session meeting.
Well, I think there's a large bucket. We have the charitable and community organizations that we could deal with. CAO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to address Councillor Coughlin's comment. Usually we only go in closed session when we talk about the actual organizations and individual people. We have last year, same time, we came with the proceeds of the golf tournament and just asked for, and this is just rough guidance at this time. We can change those pots in the future depending on need.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. Can you tell us what was spent on the community assistance program in the last year and what the remaining funds are available before any allocation of this with respect to the community assistance program? No?
So,
Oh, it says there, sorry. Got that.
can we, quite honestly, for the moment, community assistance program, we've got a bit of history and we know what's kind of generally happening. So, you know, if we lose or leave something like even say 5,000 or 6,000 or something like that in that assigned area, and then put the rest in the big bucket of charitable and community organizations, we can come along as we have applications or requests and deal with them then. Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French. And as council will recall, during our last meeting, CAP became amalgamated with other, it was the international bursary grants. So they became amalgamated. So my question is then, is this amount of money amalgamated with that, or how is that going to happen?
CEO Brindley.
Well, thank you. Good question through the Mayor, Councillor Coghlan. The individual structures will still remain, but the Clerk's Department didn't see a need for 3 different grant committees. So the idea is one committee will assist in adjudicating different grants. That was at least the purpose of that exercise.
Follow-up?
Through you, Mayor French, to the members of council. As a member of CAP, I personally feel that the 8,500 that's in there would suffice another year of requests, if not more. I don't see the need for this council to put any more money allocated. I think that the money would be better spent by this council directing the funds directly to community organizations and charities.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, and I can confirm that no CAP applications, no funds have been dispersed through CAP applications for 2018.
Okay. Councillor Hanna.
I don't disagree, I just have a question. If we don't do it, are we consistent with what we told people we were raising money at the golf tournament for?
Very valid point.
We can put it in there, we don't have to spend it, but at least we're following through on what we said we were doing.
No, I think it's a valid point. So we probably don't have to put a big number in there. And since we have 85, like, do you want to put 2,500, 3,000? I'm open to suggestions, and we'll put the balance in the general category. So is there, anybody got a comfort level with a number we'd like to put in for the community assistance program? Deputy Mayor Allen.
A point of clarification. I remember different CAP applications coming forward and we approved them. So I'm surprised at your comment that we haven't spent any money in the last year on CAP.
Madam Clerk.
Yes, thank you. So that's just for 2018. Those applications, I know there were a couple in the third quarter of 2017, but for 2018, there was one application received, and it was deemed to be not eligible for the grant. But other than that, no other applications were received in 2018.
Okay. So is that what we want to do is 1,000 or, okay. So we'll put 1,000 in for that, and then shall we put the balance in because it's kind of a catch-all for the charitable and community organizations, whatever that number is. Councillor Coghlan?
And can we confirm the number set aside for the physician recruitment?
I think we're gonna say a bucket of 11,000, and it will deal with it, and for some reason there is, and again, Councillor Ritchie, I would suggest that, you know, we put some money in there, but we do need a presentation and the appropriate requests. Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor French, just wanted to comment while we're talking about physician recruitment. I know other municipalities up there, they give money right directly to the hospital, and that's something worth, that goes towards a new bed or whatever. You get lots of traction out of that, or towards the new doctors, so that's worth to consider as well too.
I think the only reason we restricted physician recruitment is because the county has got a huge pool of funding they're giving in to hospitals for capital, and part of the agreement was that they would not be seeking funds directly from the lower level municipalities. So I hear what you're saying though, yes. Okay, so moved by Coghlan. Any other questions? Moved by Coghlan, second by Hannah. The report from the Recreation and Special Events Coordinator regarding 2018 Springwater Swing Golf Tournament dated September 19, 2018 be received. That proceeds from the Springwater Swing Golf Tournament be allocated as follows: $1,000 in Community Assistance Program, $18,842.12 to charitable and community organizations, and $11,000 to physician recruitment, and further the disbursement of the above noted funds be in accordance with township protocol. Deputy Mayor Allen.
In the physician recruitment, do you want to indicate the split between the 8 and the 3?
I probably not at this time, because,
Okay.
yeah, okay. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're moving on to information reports. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Hannah and Coghlan? Do we want to pull either of these reports? Okay, that reports items 13.2 through to 13.3 be received as information. All those in favor? Carried. Some verbal reports now. Official plan update, Director Spagnol.
Thank you, Mayor French. Official plan update, really, there's nothing to update at this point other than we're still receiving comments regarding the draft documents that have been released and that are available on the website.
And economic development update?
Yes, yesterday afternoon and last night, or last evening, the focus group for the website was conducted, and the purpose of that focus group was to take a look at the layout of the website. We received a lot of good comments during the afternoon session and a lot of good comments during the evening session. Next steps will be for eSolutions to take those comments back to refine the site layout for the website and as to how it's going to be set up. The main goal of that whole process was to try to make a website that is user-friendly, functional, and speaks to the residents of Springwater in terms that they're going to understand to make it to make information more accessible, along with the programs and assistance that is provided through the website.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French, through you to Director Spagno. Approximately how many people came out to the evening session?
Director Spagnol.
Thank you, Mayor French. Councillor Austin, that's a great question. We did not get the turnout that we were hoping to get. We only had, I think, 2 residents, a couple of staff members, and so it was a small group, but we did have some good conversation to try to provide a layout that will be user-friendly.
Yeah, and I would like to comment, because it was a very lively discussion in the afternoon, a lot of good feedback and moving Post-it notes around and adding some terminology, and certainly very interactive. A lot of staff here, and they're the ones that certainly have to deal with information and that, but it was very, very productive. And, you know, and I do congratulate the methodology that eSolutions used. Certainly allowed everybody to focus down quite quickly and accomplished a lot in those 3 hours, so that was well done. County updates. Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. The last meeting, September 11th, was a quick one, but there were a couple of points of note. The first was the results of the OMB, now called the LPAT, hearing in Geofam Quarry. This is a legal matter that LPAT reviewed. Read the compensation for the use of Simcoe roads to get aggregate to market. The OMB, now LPAT, ordered the company to meet with county officials to negotiate a compensation package. Geofam appealed the decision and lost, so the LPAT decision is final and binding. This is an important decision to municipalities generally in that it authorizes non-host municipalities to request maintenance contributions, as well as allows even host municipalities to ask for additional contribution if the provincially mandated per ton royalty is deemed insufficient to compensate for the impact of the quarry. It is important, very important to Simcoe County in that it was estimated that the Geofam quarry would add an average of approximately $40,000 per year to the county road maintenance budget for the 94-year expected life of the quarry. So this sets some interesting precedents that we as a township should consider along those lines for any aggregate quarries and the roads surrounding. The other item was, of course, the resignation of the warden, and the deputy warden, Terry Daddle, was affirmed to assume all duties required of a warden, head of council, as prescribed in the Municipal Act and the Procedures Bylaw. And then I wasn't in attendance, but I believe other councillors were in attendance at the warden's golf tournament. So if you want to comment on that.
No, I think the golf tournament went well. It definitely didn't raise as much funds as it has in previous years, but it was at the new resort, and it was quite enjoyable and a lot of camaraderie, and it went quite well, and would be my only comment on that. And we're going to have a wholesome, next week at County Council, we will actually have a council and a committee of the whole, because our last one was a committee of the whole only. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Deputy Mayor Allen. Where is the Geofam quarry located?
It's in the Kawartha region.
But we were talking about Simcoe County roads, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess that doesn't make sense. No, I'd have to get back to you on that. Maybe I was thinking of something else, so I can find that out for you.
I know where as soon as you get towards the Kawarthas, you're into Ramera, and Ramera has a lot of roads and a lot of quarries in that, so it probably was interacting with that, because it has been a challenge up there, and they'd like to obviously have a lot more. Now, one thing that, any other questions of the county? Okay, before I go to the municipal, because it's not on my thing here, but it's on the agenda, I went to the kind of educational DC charge at the Board of Education last week, and of course, there's some suggestions made, and we know that the educational kind of, they give a number of scenarios, but significant increases, such as 187% and huge increases of that nature, and they're going to come back with a recommendation. Overall, there was even some suggestion that maybe be broken into a north and south region. And the only thing I addressed at that meeting was that a previous kind of report and study they had done, they had included Oro-Medonte and Springwater in what's considered the north, because the natural borderline would have been Barrie, and for the sake of argument, Highway 90. But what they did in their suggested proposal, if they're going to have two rate structures, they shifted Springwater and Oro-Medonte into the kind of southern section, which we felt may not make a lot of sense. And of course, if we were in the northern section, the increases would be a lot less significant, but they're huge kind of increases. I guess we have to wait and see what the board does and see if they pass it and see who appeals it. It's probably the short report. And the only discussion we had is, would we like to draft, and I guess it would require, support of council, would we like to kind of, draft a letter saying that, if the board decides that they are going to split a north-south rate structure, that Springwater be included in the northern section as in the past. It's probably the only thing that we would comment on, because we've made lots of comments on the rates and all those kind of things. And when you do all the calculations based on what they're doing, what they're buying, it works out correct, it would appear to. So I think our only challenge would be if they do break it into kind of a north-south structure, we definitely want to be included in the north, because we are going to have less development relative to all the municipalities in the south. So our rates should be, and we're not going to have as many new schools and as the south would be anyway. Councillor Hanna.
If I understand what you're saying, if we do that, does that not mean Springwater would collect less money for development charges for education for schools?
Yes, it would, but we're talking about moving from $1,700 to about $5,000 per unit. And if we're not receiving the benefit, I think the argument, if we're not having as many new schools built, why are we paying the same rate as Bradford, West Gwillimbury, or Barrie, or the areas in the south, Innisfil, that are growing much faster? I think is the reason I don't think they're probably going to go with it, but just in case they do, I'd sooner have lower kind of DCs, because the reality is, in our smaller communities where we have controlled development, all of a sudden that could become a barrier to making houses affordable for those people that may want to afford it. So that would be my only comment.
So I like the way you think, but I don't agree with you on this one. We need new schools in Menacing. We need a new school in Forest Hill. If we don't collect the money, then how are we going to pay for these schools? We'll have to do like they did in Elmville and go with our hands out trying to get money from people to build stuff for schools. I think we need to collect the money because we need the schools here.
But recall, the DCs are only for the growth related, not for, so basically new schools or expanded schools. That's it.
But the schools we currently have now, they need additions. Like we got all kinds of portables. We got 9 portables at Forest Hill. I don't know how many they got over in Menacing. I think they got 11 if I remember right, but I'm not positive. So I would say get as much money from the developers as we can, because we need it for our schools. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French. It may be worthwhile to ask Director Schmidt to provide a report to more information to council, so that we can formulate a decision as to whether or not we would like to be requesting to be out of the southern consideration. I do think that the information that BCOC has brought forward to us numerous times, indicating the growth at our schools, and knowing that Forest Hill is, the septic alone is causing enough of a problem. So whether or not us moving away from that DC would prevent work that needs to be done at schools to being done. So I don't think that the council tonight should request a letter without understanding what the actual impact would be to the schools that are existing, not only new schools.
I think the point is, it's a pool of money. Doesn't matter if the school is being expanded in Springwater or it's just a rate difference. It still goes into the entire pool. So the fact that our rates are lower in the north doesn't mean it's going to deprive us of building the school. It's just that the rates in the south are going to be higher. And that's probably where it should be in another way, so it kind of balances out, because let's face it, you're going to have more economic growth and businesses and commercial than we are in the south, so they should be contributing more, I think was the argument. If they go that, something tells me, I'm not sure the board's going to recommend that, because unfortunately we can send off our recommendations one way or the other, but the report that was sent to us kind of outlined what the thinking was of the county educational DCs. So my only question is, do we, and we don't have to, but in case they do go with the north-south, I think we would prefer, even discussion with Jeff, we'd prefer to be in the north. They're most likely going to go with one rate because it becomes a little more difficult to manage. There was even some discussion of splitting even some of the municipalities north and south, and that would even be a little more complicated exercise. CO Brindley, do you want to comment on this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in general, staff was just looking for direction from council to report back. And what we can do is provide information that I've seen from a number of council members today and wrap that up in terms of what the DCs are really for, the implications, and then council can provide that guidance of whether they want to provide a direction with respect to the DC, whether the main issue that the mayor's speaking to is where that line should be, whether Springwater should be in the north or in the south. Yeah.
The only additional comment I have to make is I do believe they want to deal with this in the October meeting. That's why I'm just going to say, if we want to make comment, we probably have to make comment now or forever hold our peace. Councillor Coghlan.
Are we able to confirm that it is one pool and that all the projects that are done are simply the same way it's been done before? Because if that's the way it is and it's something I would support, I do not think that the growth in Springwater is equivalent to the growth in the south of Simcoe. So I don't feel that we should, or our residents or new residents should be paying that type of DC.
No, it is one pool, because if you look even at the totals and their scenarios, if they go north-south, the south is much higher to equal that roughly 5,000 per. So it is one, I think, I forget how many million, it's 100 and whatever millions of, I can't remember how many it is, million. I think it was $18 million over the time frame that they're basically going to gather in DCs and to build schools and so forth. So that number didn't change and the schools didn't change. It was just how do we collect that money? Yeah. Councillor Anna?
So, just to confirm, it's one pool, we collect all the money in Simcoe County, and they can take the money from Springwater, if you like, and build a school someplace else, is that what you're saying?
Yes. And
Okay, then I support your letter.
it would be very simple direction, just saying, if you choose this option, we'd prefer to be in the north. Because I think that's really the argument, because we don't get to say a lot about the rate, because they're the ones collecting it. CO Brindley, do you want to comment further?
Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. It really comes down to the land prices in the south are more than the land prices in the north. And the northern municipalities feel it's not fair to be charging that larger fee when the land prices are cheaper. Because that's what's really distinguishing the difference between this fee is what they're equating as the assessed value, the average assessed value of land. And they're essentially applying a southern rate across Simcoe County.
Yeah, and actually, not to mislead it, that money they're collecting, that DC is strictly for land acquisition. Yeah, I should have clarified that. The ministry pays for the school. And actually, thank you for saying that, because what they did, they also went across the board and said it's $1 million an acre. No, but that's how we ended up with that. But, and we know it's not going to be $1 million an acre here for kind of school property, because we'll negotiate something with a developer, or definitely in the south it will be $1 million or more. So thank you for that clarification. So is it okay if we have staff just draft a comment that if they, no, that's fine, it's good discussion. If we're, if they do proceed with a split, that Springwater should be considered in the northern section. It's kind of the only direction we need in that letter, and I think we do have to get it out in the next week or so, because I believe that their next meeting is first week of October or something. So I think we do have to comment if we want to comment. So is everybody supportive of that? Do we need a resolution for that, or? Madam Clerk? Deputy Mayor Allen?
Point of clarification for the audience on that question of Councillor Austin's.
GeoFam is in the city of Kawartha Lakes, but the haul routes do go directly down through Simcoe County, so that's why it was an issue.
Okay, the resolution will simply read that staff be directed to provide comments to the Simcoe County District School Board requesting that spring water be included in the northern section. And we'll finalize the wording. A mover and a seconder for that, Hannah and Coghlan. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So back to our schedule again. Municipal updates. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Reminder that the Elmvale Fall Fair is coming up on the Thanksgiving weekend, which is about 2.5 weeks. The Elmvale Business Improvement Area had its AGM last night and elected a new executive. Am I allowed to mention the all candidates meeting? No? Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, and you have to be patient with me because I have to give a lot of information here about the Autumn Fest Fall Fair in Medhurst. Saturday, the 29th of September. This is the 49th annual thing for this, even though it was a couple of years where it fell apart and nobody did it. So Lori Hannah's been running it now for 8 years. She has 3 young high school students that have stepped up to help her run it. So I have to thank staff for their patience because these young gentlemen are doing their best to do their thing and go to school at the same time. So Parks and Rec, Public Works, Mr. Brindley and staff have been very supportive, and our fire department will be there along with others. Games, they're gonna have more vendors than ever. They got 40 vendors, and I think she's turning vendors away. It's gonna be a lot. It's the fall fair. You can come and buy your vegetables or whatever they're gonna be selling, I guess. It's Lions Park, not at the new pavilion because the pavilion's not quite ready. And I don't know what else I can tell you, but anyway, thank you for everybody. Be there on the 29th of September, 11 in the morning. And the volunteers are always needed, so if you're not busy, give me a call.
Thank you. Any other municipal updates of activities coming up in the near future? Okay. Then we'll move on to bylaws. Oh, sorry, Madam Clerk. No, items for future consideration is actually on there. So anyway, I forgot that. Any items for future consideration? Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French. It's more of a follow-up, just on the volunteer appreciation garb. I know we had spoke last year about having something for the people that attend to the rinks, and knowing that seasons are about to change, to have that available in time so that they have that. And on that topic of volunteerism, the idea of having the volunteer appreciation in Springwater during Volunteer Appreciation Week. I know that we had talked about that, but it's not noted entirely on there, so I don't know what that would entail, but I think it would be nice to have it during that week.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's in the spring versus the fall. Okay, we'll talk as staff.
Thank you. Any other items for future consideration? Councillor Austin?
No, Mayor French, but you have skipped notices of motion.
So notice of motion. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Should we be reading Councillor Hannes first?
We've already dealt with it.
Okay, thank you. Because it does say it's going to be presented on October 3rd. Oh, I see. We did it earlier because the people were there. Sorry, I apologize. Okay, I have an item or a notice of motion for the next council meeting, and I'll read it out loud. That the Township of Springwater call upon the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, to show support for the message made by the Board of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, which opposes any use of Section 33, the notwithstanding clause of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that would have the effect of overriding local decision-making and democratic rights at the local level, and that AMO supports the ability of municipalities to govern their own affairs and represents the interests of their residents. So I am aware of the latest happenings as far as...
Okay, we can't speak to it. It's just
Okay.
a notice of motion.
All right, then, thank you.
Okay, duly noted. Any other, yes,
And
Councillor Austin?
I'm going to email this right now to the clerk.
No, that's fine. It will be on as a motion to deal with the next agenda. Any other notices of motion? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to bylaws. And can I have a mover and a seconder? Coughlin, Hannah. That the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And the confirmation bylaw, mover and a seconder. Richie. Coughlin. The bylaw 2018-067 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on September 19, 2018, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And the adjournment bylaw, can I have a mover and a seconder? Richie and Coughlin. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater is now adjourned 9:09 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on October 3rd, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. in the Council Chambers Administrative Center in Minnesing. All those in favor? Carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for anybody that stuck with us as we stream this meeting live. So thank you, council members.